We're not dealing, as many people have noted, with a particularly rational processing administration in our cities and government right now. There are people who think more clearly than others do, but they don't seem to hold sway. And we're dealing with people who have a mania for their programs, which operate behind the revolving bookcase. People don't really know what is being done. Now, even when they do, for some reason, our safety mechanisms of journalism have fallen short. For example, there have been reports of rape of the Freedom Flotilla to Gaza when the Israelis took them into custody. And it's not in the Google News, Yahoo News, mainstream media. I'm sorry, it's getting close to my Betty Bye. No. I'll try to do, I have Parkinson's. And occasionally I've engaged in linguistic capture that allowed the administration to opportunize and say that I wasn't making sense. Yeah, Parkinson's, you have to use these doodads who voice tools, and the voice tools get spelling wrong, words wrong, and it's painstaking. I try to keep people informed. It's pretty obvious sometimes that what I'm using a tool that's sort of off functioning. If it's a complete distortion, I try to fix it. But if it's largely understandable, sometimes I leave it go for better days ahead. Now, if you look at the rational process, I'll give you an example. When I went to Pitt on October 17th, 1993, I had evidence of a crime. And by going to Pitt, I was notifying the police. I went to their law school. And I went to cancel an appointment because they told me not to bother anybody, and I didn't like the sound of that. They said I could stay on campus. So, but politely, I came to cancel, and they arrested me for trespass. I mean, it's a ridiculous story. When I showed them the evidence, they said, we don't have to look at the evidence. Can we tell by what you're saying that it doesn't say that you're hallucinating? They didn't have to look at it to tell that. They put me through 15 years of homelessness, exile, psychiatric brutality, castrated me, gave me Parkinson's, tortured me. And they put up a schema board at Carnegie Mellon, Gregor Morgan's gang with Peter Gabriel, that clearly showed they had discovered to their satisfaction that Wattenmaker's nerve agent caused me rejection trauma. That they could aggravate by lying to me about my girlfriend, having her sleep around. I mean, one of the Lisas made off with one of my best friends. One of my best friends made off with one of the Lisas. And they were saying, see, it's because you're like this, it's because you're like that. They were building a psychological profile, in other words. And they used neurohypnosis, and they were trying to trigger a seizure, and you could see the nerve agent. Logical administration process would say, okay, so there's a neurochemist involved in neurohypnosis who's trying to trigger a tantrum so he can point the finger at his victim. And they pursued this for so many years that they actually ripper murdered a girl in Seattle to get me mad enough that I shook my fist at them. Because Amnesty International was with Yoko Ono, and they were saying Yoko Ono was doing this with them. And they were saying, no, a threat is not nonviolence. A threat is not nonviolence. And they had to get to the point where they ripper murdered a girl and make me angry enough to say, you know, while you're so insufferable, I'll break your nose. And then Obama jumps down, hold pee-pee a twirl. See, he's not nonviolence. Exotic weirdos. So they have this, and it's a neurochemical contraption from Dr. Mackenzie and Wattenmaker. And then they have the vinyl solution in East Palestine. How's that for poetry? They have the vinyl. And they grab a girl named also Mackenzie, Sharilla, which is like Shaviti, the book about the LSD hypnotists from Holocaust survivors. In other words, a trauma is so great that it's a Holocaust, like Holocaust simulation experiment. And I wrote down after it happened, my soul conscience took over. My voice was screaming out from inside of me. How could you do this to me? You must stop, right? My soul conscience took over. My mind, I remember my mind just barely being able to rescue me. And Mackenzie Sharilla exhibited the same symptoms. The guys who were in the car with her knew all of that. She put it in social media. Ohio State is just lying about where the hallucinogens came from, but what the purpose of them were. And the doctrine of the Clucker court is to say, you're insulting the victims by saying this. I never said anything. I admit that they were victims of a neurohypnotic car bombing. That's all. All of the evidence shows that that's what happened. What they did, and with the Seattle's cunning too, they had a girl named Mac show up at the clubhouse, because they synthesize everything. Nobody is allowed to have individuality here. Everybody has to be hysterically poured forward into the cauldron of shifty spinner beanie UW dialectical. They have to be tokens of representation of the us phenomenon, or else they think they're big. So they poached Mackenzie. They grabbed her. They took her hostage, and they knew what they were doing. And it was organized crime. It was an organized crime that singled this girl out. Now, she went to, I gather, an Ohio public school. I went to a Pittsburgh public school. What the fuck is wrong with you that you Ohio school students would abandon a peer who was a victim of a neurochemical car bombing? I didn't even hurt anybody. And it was the same little cluster of aggressors from administration who pulled it. Brilliant neurochemical hypnotists. And they wanted Seattle. Remember that I told you they ripper murdered a girl to show that I could get me mad and angry. You can make Matt Curry angry, and that's not nonviolence. Yoko Ono and Amnesty International say no to Matt Curry because he got angry when they ripper murdered Shannon Harps. Shannon Harp served, they announce. This is the mindset. This is what they're out to, because of the penny and the sea and the Star of David. No one is innocent, they say the Israelis. No one gets the penny, say the Seattle Green Party. And it's the same noxious cunning. But they needed to show that the neuroplasm did make people dangerous. They never succeeded in making me. Leslie was completely untouched after years of dating me, buck naked, and she was a virgin when we broke up. Night after night, we were together. She was buck naked. I was looking at. She was. She was a virgin when we broke up. Nothing Robert Fripp ever schemated had ever could ever change that. And Seattle's out there ripper murdering people to prove that I could get angry. They needed to show that the neurochemical could theoretically make somebody self-destructive. Why did they need to do that? Why did they need this East Palestine vinyl solution? Because it's how they justified Mount Desert Island. They said I was hassling Leslie. And we know what people who had stranger things have happened, said KDKA, Black News. Than a jealous boyfriend getting mean to a girl. I wasn't mean. I was indignant. I said what she was doing and what they were implying was that date rape is okay, and I'm not into it. And then for this, Mackenzie Cirillo had to be experimented on to justify Mount Desert Island so Seattle could rip or murder somebody so they'd get the penny. And Barack Obama comes spiraling down, jump down, hold PP. All PP, all world. We made him mad. He shook his fist. Ha 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 ha. We win. Ha 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 ha. Win. Ha ha ha.